So you guys, 10, 12 weeks ago, a Zoom intro was all tech, right? We were figuring out where mute buttons were. We were looking at different views, and we were looking at how you call in on your phone if your tech crashes. And that's not really where we are anymore. And so we'll talk about maybe 2 minutes of tech stuff, and then we're going to talk about how to use the platform and how to think about the event that you're creating. So keep in mind, still one of the best things you can do in any virtual event is just talk very freely with your attendees about how to use the space and how the space is going to be used. So you'll notice, like, I don't know, half of you have been to at least 5 events with me in the last couple months. It's been a pleasure. I always start by acknowledging that I am looking at a screen that's full of faces like Brady Bunch, right? That's gallery view. We all know that now. But it's so helpful to let people know the control that they have in the space. Okay, and this is going to come back to why we're using Zoom. It's about how people feel in the space. So letting people know that that button in the top left-hand corner can switch their perspective, and that you recommend that they stay on gallery view for this meeting, or that you recommend they stay in speaker view. That can be really helpful, and it lets them know that you're trying to be mindful of their experience. And it starts the meeting in a way that just says, I'm here to support you, right? I'm here to protect you and bring you along for the ride, even if this space is uncomfortable for you. I also always let people know of the background plan of how to get back here if they get lost. And this isn't just about the technology. This is how we actually let people know we want them here, right? So when I point out that I said left before I meant right. When I point out in the top left-hand corner that there's a little info button, and that button has the meeting ID, I can let people know that if they get cut off from their laptop, if their laptop starts a reboot, or if the internet crashes or something goes wrong, that they can have their phone nearby, they can have the Zoom app, and that number right in the top left-hand corner, in this case, it's 854-9003, 9822, that's a number they want to have on hand so that they can get back to us as soon as possible. So again, that's about the tech, but it's more about telling people that it matters that they come, that they'll be missed if they leave. So the tech matters. Your mute button is in the bottom left-hand corner. People have 3 or 4 mute options. I always talk about that mute.
While she's doing that, I will talk about that we're doing this because you will be having a lot of Zoom meetings. You can't do house parties now. You can do garden parties, and Dr. Lara will be helping us with that. But when we get Jill back, that's what she's talking about. So it looks like she just checked out, and she'll check back in a minute. So Zoom meetings, yeah, so the purpose of having her on here is because even if you've had Zooms that you're comfortable with, when you are the candidate and you're hosting it, people have a different expectation about you being in charge and knowing everything about it. So
I think I'm back. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but your face is frozen.
So that's strange. That hasn't happened. That was happening to me a ton earlier. We got new internet. So what I was saying is, as you introduce any kind of tech option, it's really twofold. You're introducing it, but you're also telling people how you want them to interact in the space. Can you still hear me? I see confused faces. Yeah. Okay, we're good. So pointing out where the mute button is very helpful. You're also, as you're pointing out that piece of tech, you're letting people know how you want them to use it. So you are setting the stage. And this is going to come into play into 3 or 4 tips I have in general for building live events. But again, it's key that you guide people. You let them know how to use the space, and that you do it in a way that honors that you're glad they're there and that it means something to you. So every tech thing that you explain to people, you explain it in a way that builds community. So you don't have to say, we're a community and it's critical to my campaign that you're here. You'll say that, but even just walking people through with a 5-minute tech overview is a way of setting the standard for how you feel about them and your expectations for the next hour. Rooms could be part of that. Screen share, like if you're going to want participation with screen sharing, you would introduce that feature right at the beginning. But what I'm going to do now in the chat is put, hopefully depending on how my computer is acting, I'm going to put these quick tips.
That's fine. I'm Dr. Lara Hardman. I have worked in pulmonary medicine, so the lungs, for the last almost 19 years here in Salt Lake City, as well as I used to be an ER doc and an ICU doc. So hopefully I have some understanding of this disease. And as important, my 19-year-old son works as a door-to-door salesman. And we've had this topic comes up at least weekly with us on how to keep him safe and the community he's in Arizona, all the elderly people there safe. So when you're canvassing under COVID, it just throws a completely different thing because everybody's going to be thinking about that. And nobody's opening their doors these days without thinking, what does that mean for me? And nobody wants to knock on doors without thinking, what does that mean for me? And hopefully everybody here has been watching the numbers and are aware that in Salt Lake City, as well as Utah County and up north, as well as way down south, our numbers are increasing at the second fastest rate in the nation right now. It doesn't mean our numbers are the highest, but our rate of increase is really high right now. And unfortunately, a lot of smart people and knowledgeable people are also taking too much stock in the whole red, orange, yellow, and that it means something other than economic. It means nothing medically, and I'm probably speaking to the choir, and you guys know that nothing has changed except for the worse in going from red to orange, or for most of the state, yellow. And so I just want to go over some of the information and possible misinformation that's come out, particularly recently. So masks, for some reason, I can't explain it. There's lots of things. Masks have become a slightly political issue. Don't approach it like that. Masks are a public health issue, and just stay open and don't even address it as a political issue. And there are three kind of masks. There's more, but there's three basic kind of masks out there. Everybody knows this is a respiratory virus, and it's spread by both droplet and aerosolization. Okay, so one of the most dangerous things are, singing, talking loudly, even more so than coughing, sneezing, even though the force generated by coughing, sneezing, if you're wearing a mask, that's all droplet. So if you have a regular mask, cloth mask that you got, or a hospital paper mask, the importance of that is preventing yourself from spreading droplets, okay, which is going to be 75 to 80% of transmission, and is all about respecting and preventing you spreading to other people. So even though this is recorded, the best little cartoon I've seen is the guy with his penis hanging out of his underwear. And you've all probably seen that, and so the mask with the under the nose is like having your penis hanging out of your underwear. It doesn't do anything, and because it's the droplet. But these masks don't protect you at all from other people, because once it's out and it's aerosolized, these are not tight to your face. So if you are an at-risk person, and we'll have questions, but over 65, underlying heart, lung disease, you guys have all heard these things. The N95 mask is what you should be wearing if you're going door to door. And that's not the N95 with the exhalation valve, because that protects you but doesn't protect other people. A regular N95 protects both. They're not easy to come by. I have some that I've had forever, but Amazon does have some. But when you approach, you're going to want to have hand sanitizer, I think wipes, because you're going to be ringing a doorbell or knocking. And I think, you know, out of respect for people and protect yourself, anything you touch, you need to wipe down and back away. They open the door. If they have a mask on, great. Stay your 6 feet apart. Do your thing. If they don't have a mask on, minimum of 6 feet. Okay, people are saying, you know, wear your mask if you're under 6 feet, a minimum of 6 feet. You're going to be staying back. I do this all day, every day, and I'm talking to people, and I literally get short of breath in my mask when I'm talking sometimes. So don't, you know, you've all experienced this, right? You know, so take a breath, you know, have some humor there. You know, I think it's okay in a non-judgmental way to say, hey, I want to talk to you about this. Do you have a mask? And if they say no, or I don't care, because my son says this happens all the time. Oh, I don't believe in that, or I don't care. Okay, that's fine. But then if you don't have an N95, you need to stay a minimum of 6 feet away and say, hey, I'd like to talk to you or leave you this literature. Anything you have signed, papers, pencils, I think it's important to show that they're clean, you know, wipe them off before, after, those kind of things. The issue now, so you may have heard the WHO spokesperson, and she kind of had to re-explain a lot. It was taken out of context this week when they said there was minimal asymptomatic transmission. What the data showed on that there are very few cases with the antibody testing we're seeing where people actually have no symptoms and are testing positive and have transmitted this. So that is very low, but it's very different from what I'm calling pre-symptomatic transmission. So a big study out of Italy showed that 30 to 40% when they did contact tracing were people who were pre-symptomatic. They didn't know they were sick and they spread it during that time. So there's a lot of miscommunication, people not understanding this, what it is, but it is just not being sick isn't enough. You have to assume everybody you come in contact, including yourself, has this virus in order to keep everybody safe. That's kind of it. Hopefully you guys are all aware of that, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
You're all on mute, so if you have questions for Lara or Dr. Hardman, please come up with those questions.
So, Doctor, you're thinking that we could actually go door-to-door canvassing if we had our wipes and we touched the doorbell with our elbow, and then we've got our mask on. We step back off the porch. And then when the people come to the porch, if they'll stay there and I can be back here, then I can say, hey, you know, I think you need to vote for Terry or whoever, you know, I mean, just, and I'll be safe and they will be safe.
Yes, absolutely. You take those precautions, you can do that safely.
Okay.
Following up on Robin, I have a question. One thing that I wonder about is when you're staying 6 feet apart, you're talking louder.
Absolutely. And this is two things this is predicated on. One, you're on their porch, you're outside, you're not invited into their home. Everything I'm saying is predicated on your being outdoors. I personally am not going to be eating inside a restaurant anytime soon, whether it's okay, they're spread out, whatever, with people talking and not masking. But by you wearing, you're going to be doing presumably most of the talking, and by you wearing even the cloth mask, because it's so close to your face, everything that's coming out of your mouth and your nose is large droplet particles that close to your face. So even talking loudly, using, a good lung volume, you will be capturing those particles that way. Now, if they're yelling at you and they don't have a mask, that's when you want to like back up and say, okay, I'll leave this here. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, I'm going to go see your neighbor.
Yes, exactly.
Lara, what do you think about using a stylus? Like if you had a pencil to ring the doorbell, or if you had something with you that you knocked on the door with, so that it's something that you don't ever touch the part that touches the door, then you don't have to wipe it in between.
Yep, I think using something other than your hand, even a wipe itself, a Clorox wipe, or a stylus or a pencil is a good idea. If you use your hands, you're going to use a sanitizer before and after you knock or touch the doorknob. And I think, wiping the doorknob or the doorbell, if you do touch it, even elbows, things like that is respectful.
I was wondering, if we're wearing face masks, how long can we wear them? Like if we're going out and canvassing and we're speaking over and over at each door, how long can we wear that face mask before it becomes contaminated, and should we change it?
So very, very good question. So one, you can wear it all day. You want to touch it by the ear straps when you're taking it off and on. You don't want to be futzing with it like this all the time like you see people do. But there's two issues there. If you're using it to protect other people, you can wear it all day, every day, and not really worry about contamination. Okay, so the idea on these cloth masks is you're protecting other people. But on the other hand, you're going to want to let it sit for a day before you use it. So at work, I basically have 2 masks that I've been rotating. I wear one all day. And then it sits and I wear the next one all day. I do wear, the other thing for those of you without goggles, we don't have great data on this, but if you are somebody who personally you are at a high risk population, you either seriously want to think about goggles, sunglasses, or some kind of eye protection. It's clearly it can be transmitted through the mucous membranes in the eyes. But that's generally for close contact. But and if you're a young, healthy person, and your canvassers knocking on the doors and they're more worried about other people since they're going house to house, that's probably not necessary. But like Rebecca, if you're knocking on doors, you might want to consider. And then of course, like anybody knocking on doors, if you have a face mask, have your ID so they can see who you are, because nobody knows who you are.
Good point. Any other questions for Dr. Hardman?
Good question, sorry. So it's okay if you take it off by your ears, it's okay to take it off and put it back on and reuse.
I do it all day, every day.
Okay. And you said letting it sit for like a day, 24 hours, that's
Yep.
good. You don't necessarily have to wash it every time.
So the cloth masks, so those are the ones we wear in the hospital and we're not washing them. If you're using a cloth one, I probably would wash it after a day use. So you're going to want to have several of those, just because of the materials are so varied on those, you have no idea in terms of that. They're again going to be safe, keeping you from transmitting, but just to keep yourself extra safe, I would probably wash those after a day.
Thanks.
Laura?
And just so everyone knows, if you're a member of the Women's Democratic Club, we have been busy today sending you a mask in the mail that says Women's Democratic Club, so that you can put that one on when you have your other one in the wash.
So, I have a cute one. It says, if you can read this, you're too close.
Do you like that?
I
do have a
Hey,
question.
Laura. Quick question. So you see a lot of people out and about with the masks that have the vents on them.
Yes.
Efficacy as far as help saving other people, saving yourself, is it doing no good?
They are zero good for preventing them from helping other people. So the whole point of all of us wearing masks right now is to prevent the asymptomatic. So they're not doing, you know, really any good. On the other hand, if there's somebody who has an underlying condition, sometimes it's hard to wear an N95 mask very much. There might be a role for that, but I found 99% people just don't know the differences between the masks, but they're able to exhale in those droplets. So if somebody comes and they have one with the exhalation on it, they are not protecting you. So you want to just act like they don't have a mask on.
Okay. So I have a question. Can anyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I've been paying attention to this for 3 months. I started, and some things seem to be moving targets. One thing that seems to be a moving target is how infectious something can be that you hand somebody, like a flyer.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you make somebody feel comfortable that, you know, you're handing them a flyer and it's not contaminated?
So the reason it's a moving target is because the targets change. So the virus stays alive on different surfaces for different times and different temperatures and different humidities. So the hotter it is and the more humid it is, the more it's going to be on larger water things, and it's going to not stay on surface as well. That doesn't help you very much with a paper flyer. How I have talked to my son about this, since he does have paper things, he goes, he has it in a folder. He doesn't touch the folder other than the outsides, and what he does is he kind of hands it to him and lets them take it. There may be some, you know, it's not always perfect, but paper, as you know, it's really hard to wipe down. If you have anything, you know, Angel's going to talk about some creative ideas, but you might want to think about, you know, how much paper you do want to hand out, things that can't be sanitized. Of course, it's the most economical and reusable, and we don't want to hand out a bunch of plastic, but you might want to just think about keeping them in a folder that's you know, that you can easily have the person reach themselves, because we don't know really for paper, and we're a dry community. You know, we're dry, so you know, I would assume that things you touch, you know, potentially can be contaminated.
Laura, what are your thoughts then about if somebody had a glove and the paper was like a high gloss, thick, you know, handout, so that
I think gloves are a great idea, you know, because as long as, you know, once you've put on the glove, you're not touching your face, you know, coughing or sneezing into that is probably a better, easier solution there.
I think what I'm seeing is that people are starting to notice as they get out, they're seeing people in shops and restaurants and things with gloves. So folks are getting used to having things handed to them by somebody wearing gloves. So.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to weird out anybody if you're wearing gloves.
Exactly.
No, I think contrary, you're going to make them feel safer.
Right. Yeah, you just need to be careful, because we're, you know, even though it has been months and we've learned not to touch your face, you'd be surprised how many things you do touch, even with your gloves on, until you know, you really stop and think about it. So be aware of that.
Laura, thank you so much. I have learned a lot listening to you right now. I'm sure people will have more questions. So if people come up with them at the end of the call, the Zoom, we can do that. If you want to put them in the chat room, I can get them and put them on the Facebook page and answer them. We might have time at the end for more question and answers, but I'm going to move on now to Emily Hase. Emily, are you still with us?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, very great. Thank you, everybody. This is Emily Hase. She is the chairwoman of the Salt Lake County Democratic Party, and she is going to help us with the tools that we need.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk today about MiniVan, which is a canvassing app. So I have a presentation I'm going to share. So I'm going to attempt to share my screen. Oh, I can't do that. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about MiniVan. So MiniVan is a canvassing app that we use for canvassing for anyone who's using Vote Builder. Okay, so we're talking about MiniVan. MiniVan is an app that you will use for canvassing. So it is available on your Apple or Google store, depending on what kind of phone you have. And I recommend that everyone download it and get set up with your action ID if you don't already have one. That way, whenever you're ready to canvass or help a candidate with like a literature drop, you can be ready to go with that. So this is what it'll look like. It's called MiniVan Touch, and you'll be able to download that from your app store for your phone. So I want to talk a little bit about the benefits of MiniVan. And so this will be relevant to you whether you're a canvasser who's volunteering with a candidate, or you're a candidate or campaign staffer who's thinking about using MiniVan. So the alternative to MiniVan is printed turfs. So back in the day, we used to print off lists of every single voter that we were targeting. We would have their address, we would fill out the surveys on paper, and then someone would have to manually enter that into our database. So the great thing about MiniVan is it takes away a lot of the manual work that comes along with that manual collection of data on paper, and there's some other kind of benefits too. So first huge benefit is it seamlessly integrates with Vote Builder. It's a product built by the same team. So if you're a campaign that's using Vote Builder, which is the preferred voter database of the Democratic Party, you're going to be able to use MiniVan super simply. Anytime you cut a turf in in Vote Builder, you'll be able to send it to MiniVan, which basically generates a code so that your canvasser can pull that up. Another benefit, and this is a great benefit right now, is that distribution of these lists through MiniVan is really, really easy to do remotely. So generally when we would do canvasses, we would try to gather all of our volunteers, our field organizers, our staff together in one place, have donuts and orange juice and all of that. I don't know that we'll be doing those kinds of things this year, even if it's outside. So with MiniVan, you can just send the list number to your volunteer. You don't have to meet them in person to give them their turf or their clipboard and all of that stuff. You might have to get in contact with them to give them that literature if you're going to have them handing out literature. But at least you don't have to be meeting every single time you're giving them a list to be knocking. The other benefit is that you're not dealing with that paper, like having to sanitize a clipboard and pens and having that paper like pass between your campaign staff and your volunteers, probably not something you really want to deal with. So that's a really nice thing about doing this digitally. The third benefit is that, like I said, there's no data entry. So with paper turfs, whenever someone's done, someone on your campaign has to go back and enter all of that data into Vote Builder, which is time better spent doing literally anything: fundraising, data analysis, anything that gets you closer to your win number and closer to your fundraising goal. Not having to do that data entry, especially when I know campaigns kind of across the board have been hit financially because of the economic downturn. It's been a little more difficult to raise money. So if you're experiencing that, you definitely want to optimize your time and not spend time doing data entry if you can prevent it. A cool thing about MiniVan is it has progress tracking. So you can see how far along your canvassers are. And it's especially helpful if you are hiring paid canvassers, because you can keep track of them, make sure they're meeting their daily goals. You can also track how frequently they're entering data. So if all of a sudden, if they enter 20 houses in like 2 minutes, they're probably not knocking on those doors. So it gives you a little bit more oversight into the work that you're paying for particularly. And just allows you to kind of keep that accountable and keep your canvassers toward those goals, particularly the paid ones. You can use it for different voter contacts. So you can do it for canvassing. You can also use it for lit drops. So a lot of candidates I've talked to are looking at doing just dropping literature on the door. Generally, you still want to track that. You want to know those touch points you've made with your voters who you're trying to turn out in November and who you're trying to persuade. So your volunteer can still mark those people to indicate that they've dropped that literature so that you have that for your tracking purposes. And then if that canvasser happens to talk someone, they could log that result too. Another really great benefit is that if you have canvassers who prefer to work in teams, Vote Builder allows multiple people to download the same list. So you could have two canvassers, one going down each side of the street, and they can be marking off the houses that they're knocking. And then anytime they sync their data, they're going to see which houses have already been knocked. So it gives some people, like I like to knock doors with my husband, and so we'll download the same list and then split up the sides of the street, and it makes it go pretty quickly. I will advise if you're giving a team a turf, give them a bigger one to make sure that they're covering the right amount of time, the right amount of turf in that time that they're giving. And then finally, this is kind of a fun thing with MiniVan. They implemented this, I believe, in the 2019 update, but they have notifications that come up when canvassers have finished each quartile of their list. So at 25, 50, and 75%, you'll get a notification that's kind of just a little like, rah, rah, you finished part of your list. And it's just a little bit of a motivational factor to kind of keep you going. And then at the end, it'll give them a little congratulatory, like, congrats, you finished your list. And then it'll ask them either to download another list to keep knocking, and we'll give them a prompt to sync their list to make sure that it gets uploaded into the database. Okay, so now I want to talk about some tips. So these are going to be mostly for campaigns, but if you're a volunteer, these are good things to know as well. So first tip with MiniVan is make the decision to use it and then stick with it. You will have volunteers who've been knocking doors potentially for decades who are used to using paper lists. Make the decision to use MiniVan and try not to walk it back. Accommodate if someone literally doesn't have a smartphone, like you don't want to not allow them to knock doors, but generally you want to use MiniVan consistently. That way your staff has a consistent way of distributing your turfs and you have a consistent way of receiving them, because one of the other challenges with paper turfs is just getting them back. Sometimes volunteers won't bring them back to your staging location and you never see that again, and you might as well not have done that work because you can't track the data for those voters who you've contacted. One thing that campaigns have done and the party has done in the past is purchasing either cheap smartphones or tablets that you can download the list onto and let volunteers use. Obviously, you would need to disinfect that. But the great thing about MiniVan is you don't have to have Wi-Fi to use it. You don't have to have data to use it. You can use Wi-Fi to originally download the list, and then at the end, you'll need Wi-Fi to upload it and sync it, but you don't need data throughout the time that they're canvassing. So that's an option that you can do to make sure that everyone is using MiniVan. The other thing that you can do for adoption is let your volunteers know the value. Let them know that it's really impactful to your campaign to not have to do that data entry on the back end, that they're helping you by using this method, and it'll help that transition and adoption if they're used to canvassing with paper scripts and paper turfs. Another tip is whenever you're doing confirmations for your volunteer shifts, when you're sending out that reminder, those reminder emails and texts to your volunteers to come out to canvass or do a lit drop, remind them to download it. That way you don't have to do that setup at the beginning of your canvas. They can just have that all ready to go. And you can also remind them to create an action ID if they don't already have one. Other tip is to learn and teach the shortcuts. So MiniVan has several shortcuts that make it easier. For example, whenever you're looking at someone's name, you can swipe left and just mark them not home. Nice little tip. A lot, depending on your contact rate, it's a really nice little thing to just make it a little bit easier. And make sure your campaign staff read the MiniVanual. I'll put a link into the chat once I'm out of presentation mode. So the MiniVanual is basically the user guide for MiniVan, and it is super informative. It's really user-friendly, but it's got lots of great tips and information. So make sure your staff know all of the ins and outs of that, because it'll make it easier to train your volunteers. And then finally, phone chargers. You might want to consider, if you have paid canvassers, you should probably purchase phone chargers for them, portable phone chargers, if they don't have one. You can also consider setting up like a charger station where you have portable chargers with different phone cords for the different types of phones. MiniVan eats up phone battery, especially when you're using the map view. And so you can also, in those confirmation emails, just remind volunteers to come with a fully charged phone, because there's nothing worse than getting to the end, you're not done with your turf and you have like 10% battery. It's the worst. So you'll definitely want to remind them of that. So I'm going to pause there and just see if there are any questions.
Emily, this is Karen Kwan. May I ask a question?
Yeah, go for it.
As you know, many of my volunteers come from the Chinese community, and I'm just wondering if MiniVan will offer translation at some point.
You know, I honestly don't know, Representative Kwan. That's a really good question. And that would be a really, do you know if, when you do vote builder scripts, if they translate for you?
No, I haven't used MiniVan when I work with the Chinese community. When they volunteer, we download paper lists, and they write in Chinese, and then we translate it that way. But no, we have not used Vote Builder at all.
Okay, so that would be a really good example of when it would be beneficial to use paper lists in order to accommodate that. I honestly don't know if, I would think that you could put a Chinese language script into Vote Builder, but I'm not sure if it can support, you know, Chinese characters. I'm not sure how that, I've never seen that kind of translation. So that would definitely be a challenge. You could probably use MiniVan and have a separate, if they had a paper script, but then they were entering answers into Vote Builder, but I would have to look into see if it has that translation capability, and I can definitely look into that.
Okay. Thank you, Emily.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much, Emily. We are going to move now to Emily Bingham. Emily Bingham has worked on campaigns for a long time, and she has been actually actively canvassing for the last couple of months for Terry Herekasi, and she's going to share with us her experiences so we know what to expect, and we know what to let our volunteers and people expect. Emily, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Can you all hear me? This is the beauty of COVID. I'm multitasking. We had another commitment, so we're on our way to our other commitment in the car. But as long as everybody can hear me, we'll just go forward. So there are a couple of things I want to say. First of all, I've been involved in a couple of different discussions and situations with COVID canvassing, right? So the first thing I wanted to just mention is that we're going to have a virtual fundraiser for Representative Kwan in 2 weeks. And so these Zoom tips have been very helpful. We're going to try to do it like a regular fundraiser. People will be able to pick up a dinner as part of their ticket and then take that home and then log on to Zoom. And then Representative Kwan will give a little speech and we'll have some entertainment. So it'll be just like a fundraiser, but you know, you get to do it at the comfort of your home. And then, when we started her campaign, it was right when COVID began. And we made a decision when she learned that she was going to be in a primary. We took a long, hard look at it and said, you're either going to canvass or you're not going to canvass. And what are we going to do? And we had a good conversation about it, and we decided we'd take all the CDC guidelines into effect, and we would definitely go for it and do the canvassing. So it has been a really, really positive experience. We have found that people are extremely receptive. They are also very respectful of the virus and the situation. So we go out with face masks and gloves and hand sanitizer and wipes. the volunteers will walk up to the door, ring the doorbell, put the door hanger on the door, and then step back 6 feet. And then if they answer and they want to talk, we keep that 6 feet distance and have our conversation. Some people have said, "Oh, I'm not gonna open the door, but I'm gonna go upstairs and I'll talk to you from the upstairs window." So, you know, you have these conversations where you're standing down in the driveway and they're up in their window talking to you. Some people, you know, they don't care at all. They're just like, "Oh, it's fine. I'm not too worried about it." But they're very respectful when you want to keep that distance. Like they invited us in to have cookies or whatever, and we've been like, no, it's okay. We'll keep this outside. That's not a great idea. So what we've told our volunteers is if they want to canvass, they have to follow the rules. And the first one is a mask. They've got to have their hand sanitizer. They've got to carry the Clorox wipes. They've got to, you know, keep that 6 feet distance when they're talking to somebody. And but what has really surprised me is I'd say the vast majority of what has it been, like 22 or 2,300 doors, I think, that the whole team has done. Most people, I would say, are very open to having someone to talk to. Some of the elderly people have even been very happy to have somebody actually come to the door and be able to talk about things. You know, these are all Democrats, so we can talk about just what's going on in the world for a few minutes. So I would say that canvassing during COVID has been extremely successful. When Terry first asked me, is this something that we should do? I went online and I started reading what all the experts were saying about this political year. And most of the opinion at that time, now this was back in March, but most of the opinion was, no, we don't think there's going to be any canvassing this year. But as we've gotten more information and as time has gone on, we feel pretty good as long as we stay outside, we don't go into their homes, and we keep those rules, really strictly keep the rules. It's been really successful. And I think Terry's on, and if she wants to add anything to it, she's got a couple of funny stories I know she would like to share.
Thank you, Emily.
It's been a lot of fun.
Go ahead.
Tell them about the lady with the gate with a walker.
Yeah, well, she had a gate around her, you know, a fence around her entire yard, and I saw her in her yard, and I walked up to her yard to just put the hanger on her fence because I wasn't going to go on her fenced yard. And she says, "Ah!" And she was in a walker, and she says, "Hey, don't you know about the virus?" I said, "I do. That's why I'm not coming into your yard. I understand." But I had another woman, older, bring out 2 lawn chairs, set them on each side of the lawn, and she said, "Sit down. I want to chat with you for a while." So we chatted on each side of the front yard. There's been a lot of really fun experiences like that.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And Emily, thank you for joining us while you're en route to where you're going. Does anybody have any questions for Terry or Emily? If we have other candidates or volunteers who have concerns. Okay, if you do, please feel free to chat. Oh, go ahead.
Have you had situations where people are like, "Why are you at my door? Why don't you know it's COVID? What are you doing here?"
You know,
Terry,
I have gone to doors that have like big notices on them, you know, "We're quarantining," and it's kind of and you know, I just totally skip those doors. And I feel that if you know, most people have little peepholes and rings, that I feel that those people that don't want us at their door simply don't answer their door. I think for the most, I think my daughter, when she was out canvassing, had one woman ask her, "Why are you canvassing during COVID?" And my daughter said, "You know, we're wearing masks. I'm staying on your grass when I'm talking to you. I'm trying to follow the guidelines." And so she did explain that, and that seemed to be okay. She just wanted an explanation.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Like I said, you can ask the questions later and I can get them to Emily or to Terry, and we can get back to you on that. If I'm not seeing any questions in the chat room, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to Peter. And Peter is really here talking mostly to the candidates. But if your candidate isn't here that you're volunteering for, you might want to pay attention and let them know, because he has been trying to be very creative this year in things that you can do for marketing and getting the word out, because you might not be finding volunteers who feel comfortable knocking on doors, so you might need other things. And because you need things like hand sanitizer, which you can't find at the stores. So Peter, are you still here?
I am. Can you hear me?
You're up. Yes.
Okay. Hi, good evening, everybody. I started waking up to this problem probably 3 months ago, before the county convention and the state convention. And I decided to get some hand sanitizers for my candidates and some gloves and sorts of things, and started, hey, Terry, and started thinking about the problem and putting on Facebook, like, how do we, retool? Because new tools need to be, tried out. And so I have some little tools that people can use. I have some hand sanitizers, like these. And I got gloves and I've got masks to help my clients keep them safe. And I've been thinking about how to make, the person you're talking to feel safe, and those kind of things. And then just trying to figure out what is going to work. And some people say that yard sites don't work, but I'll tell you, they are like the social distancing champion. You put them in a yard and you forget about them. Nobody touches them ever for years and years sometimes. So there's that. Letters, I can print letters. I'm a union shop. So if you need some letters and write some handwritten letters, I can do those. And also mailers are obviously working until there's a big scare at the post office that, somebody got COVID because they picked up a letter from the local post office. Until that happens, flyers, mailers going through the mail are going to be fine. And of course, my favorite, the door hanger, the monster door hanger that Emily and I have been doing for years.
I love those. They're my favorite.
Aren't they awesome? So those are also, they're like billboards on somebody's door. So if they come home from work, they can see it from their car. And those work still, they're,
People love it.
I mean, so anyway, if you need anything and if you need some advice, I love giving advice. Terry, right? I mean, we chat about things and stuff like that. I kind of
We kind of designed the COVID canvassing all together. We did.
Yeah.
We talked about it all together.
So I put on my Facebook, let's talk about this new thing we're in. I actually got told off by one of my campaign managers, like, don't be talking to candidates about this stuff. Get out of your, stay in your lane, stick to printing. Well, screw that. We're all in new territory. We need to bounce ideas off each other. And, if I can help you with campaign signs or literature, I've been doing this. My first candidate was Rocky Anderson. So it's been a while. And even if you don't know that I'm doing stuff for you, I probably did it for you or did it for somebody for you. So most of the signs going back to 2000, including, Hogle Zoo and the tracks and Caroon and everybody. I've done all of those signs. And if I can help you with literature, let me know. So
Peter, what is your phone number, contact information?
it is, the company is Union Print Shop. And that's because I'm a union print shop. And the number is 801-347-7328. And let me show you one other thing that I've got. I'm doing these really cool. I made the Women's Democratic masks, and this is one that I did for Claire. And this is one I did for today. And this is, I feel like a caboose today. I'm like the end of the line, but this is, I'm gonna say goodbye with this one. There we go.
Oh, that's great.
I just made that today because I only had my linen shirt, and I thought I'll just whip up a mask.
Peter,
Love
I
that.
think people also need to know that with COVID affecting the whole world, it's also affecting China. And I believe you get a lot of your yard signs from China. So do people need to know about different dates for ordering stuff? Like, is that taking longer or is that normal now?
I've been trying to put people on alert for 2 months. I have actually been gathering components to do printing because somebody might come to me in a month or so and say, I need some signs, and it's just not available. So the Corex to print on signs and the stakes are just not available. I actually have a fairly decent stock, like I said, but I don't make huge amounts of money. And for me to go and buy $2,000 worth of Corex is a stretch. And so I've been trying to encourage people to buy sooner. And even if they're just paying sooner, that helps me go out and grab something when it's available. And there have been times when I didn't have the cash flow and the stuff that I put on reserve got let go. I mean, they basically had to give it to somebody else because I haven't been able to really put much fire under people's feet. And it's a real thing. So I went to Joann's today. To buy some fabric. They don't have the fabric I need because the Chinese factories are not making it. It is behind everything that's going on.
So how much time do you request from campaigns in getting things?
I mean, if you are thinking about doing it, call me right away, especially yard signs. Paper's not such a big deal. Paper is available. The yard signs, if you're going to do those, that's a big deal. So yeah, I ordered 2,000 sheets of Corex. They shipped me 1 sheet. One.
So is what you're saying, if I might ask, Peter, so is what you're saying is it's not that the signs come from China, it's that the supplies that you make the signs out of
Right,
come
correct,
from China,
yeah.
and it's hard to get those supplies.
Right. Yes. The Corex that I print on, which is like plastic cardboard, is not available. And the stakes that you put them in the ground with those are extremely hard to come by.
The
Right
metal,
now I've got,
the metal stakes. The metal.
just like I started buying hand sanitizer 3 months ago, I've got gloves that I bought 3 months ago. I've been buying stakes. I've got 3,000. It's not a lot, actually. If somebody, 3 people come along and they want 1,000 signs, I'm doing Chris Peterson's. I'm pretty sure that they're going to have to ramp up their campaign. They're going to need 5,000, 10,000 pieces. There are stashes that you hear about that say 30,000 stakes, and they're gone within the hour. This is a different world entirely. I mean, if I had the money, I'd just go and buy 50,000 stakes, but I don't.
Right. Well, the thing that we need to remember as Democrats is that Republicans are having the same problem. Whoever gets the supplies first gets the material to put out there. So if you're noticing, there's not a lot of yard signs, which there usually are in a presidential year, because they're having the same issue. So if your candidate hasn't put in their orders, let them know that there is a backlog because China has a lot of factories that are closed because of COVID.
I mean, things could change in a month or so. I've got 3,000 in stock right now.
Nice. But
that's just because I used Terry's money.
Sweet. Thank you.
By the way, your mailers that should have gone today. They should be hitting people's doors today.
Okay, so today or tomorrow, I guess then.
And they look great.
Great. I can't wait to get mine. Peter, I'm just going to give Peter a plug. He worked with me 2 years ago on my son's campaign, and he's worked on my campaign, and the product that he puts out is excellent. The signs are excellent. I have never, ever had any problems with the quality and actually the timeliness that he gets them out with Peter's product. And he is a union shop, so you get the little union bug on all of your material. And that's important if you are a Democrat. So that's really something that you want to support as well.
Thank you, guys.
I love working with you.
I'm going to steal this back from you now. We have gone 5 minutes over. So if people are okay, does anybody have any questions for any of our guests right now? This was recorded. I'll edit it and post it. But if you have any questions for Emily Bingham, Emily Hase, Dr. Lara Hardman, or Peter, please feel free to ask them now or send me an email through our Facebook page or regular email, and we can try and answer them. Okay, I think we're good. Thank you all for coming. What amazing, I learned stuff today. You guys were very generous with your time. And hopefully we get a blue wave like no other, especially in Utah, because we are doing this. So candidates, I am here for you. I am the liaison that's going to be helping get members out to get out your vote. So I will be contacting all of you at a later date as well. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Night, you guys.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
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 Great meeting.